Welcome, everybody. Look, Rebelcast, episode 40. We're going to talk about two basic things today. One is, and I've given this in some of the beginning episodes, but I don't think I went into it very far or in depth. I'm going to give my MTG origin story. I love to talk about it because it shows the context where I come from, why I believe some of the things I do in terms of like what values I care about when it comes to competitive Magic, why I care about competitive Magic at all, why some of the controversies in the Magic world hit me the way they do. So my origin helps explain that. I feel like it's appropriate to give that today. It was Athena's idea. I think it's a good idea. So Athena is also here. Athena the Bun. By now, everybody knows who the hell you are. I mean, whether in the Discord or not. If you're not in the Discord, you see, you watch my streams, you see Athena pop up all the time. If you're in the Discord, well, Athena is always there to answer your questions. So, welcome. How are you today? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I've got my day off from work now that I'm back to working 4 or 5 days every week. I'm off school for the summer, so everything's pretty chill. Everything's pretty chill.
That's good. I
Yeah.
remember my undergrad years when I was in college, how summers I would not do anything at all. And looking back, like, yeah, I had a lot of fun making mischief and like getting in trouble and shit, but I wish I had been more productive. I don't know if it's your generation or you in particular, but you seem to be a lot more productive and efficient than I was that age. So kudos
Oh,
to you on that.
thank you. I just have a lot of hobbies and I get bored easily. So I do I'm still submitting like auditions and submissions for like voice acting stuff. I'm
Oh, fuck
still
yeah.
playing Magic and grinding that all the time. So yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I think starting here with episode 40 going forward, I think we've both mutually decided to uh, be a bit more candid with this show, which was the spirit originally of what I wanted to do with the Rebelcast. Why I started in the first place was to separate ourselves from other podcasts, other MTG podcasts, by uh, being a lot more candid, being a lot more real about our opinions, about our hot takes, about anything really, and bringing that to the table. And I think we can really hit that, uh, that sort of aura, so to speak, if we're just winging it. We're just doing our thing. So I think you're the perfect co-host for it. I don't want to overstep by saying too much, but since you've come on the show, you've made me kind of like rethink the way that we did this. I used to, no secret, I used to have a lot of structure. We used to have like six people on at one time, and I used to try to cover as much ground as possible in 30 minutes, and that's really damn tough. So
I
um,
manipulated you psychologically and emotionally to get you to do things the way I wanted because that's the only way I ever do things in my life, actually. So,
psychic frog style, I love it.
yeah.
Just
Oh,
just
yeah. Oh, yeah.
oh man. So two things we're going to talk about today: our origin story and gosh, Itchy. Really, you're going to start whining right now? I'm sorry if y'all hear my dachshund. She's getting old, so she definitely lets you know what she wants
She
at any
has it
given moment.
rough, but
Yeah, so hard. So that was a Darth Rictus style joke coming
good,
from you.
good.
That surprised me. Nice. The other thing we're going to talk about today is Modern Horizons 3 dropped about a week ago. I don't watch him very often, but I caught a collector's edition booster box opening by Tolarian Community College, the professor, and today, and I thought it was hilarious. One of the remarks he made in the beginning of the video was like, "Why aren't we doing an Assassin's Creed video? Isn't that the only thing out right now? Like, MH3 is a week old. That's such old ass news." Like, and it's
Oh,
funny, but it's
no.
true.
It is.
Like,
It is. Yeah, wait, is AC out?
no, it's not. But it was just like,
Oh, okay.
they've. If you look on, like, I had to look for the ban announcement this morning on the MTG News site, and if you look there and you just look by
Oh,
most recent,
so much stuff.
the whole page is
Yeah.
AC3 stuff. It's so ridiculous. But
Oh,
that
man.
and that kind of hits on major point. I don't want to spend too much time on, but that hits on a major point of why, like, I just think we're focusing too much on the casual product. I don't know. I'm not an enemy of casual product, but it's like we're losing our roots here. MTG is a competitive game, and I would say 60% so. But that's my hot take. Even giving 60% might be too much for some people. But I really
All
think
right,
this
we need to
is
get back to our insidious roots.
insidious.
Ah, ah.
I love it. I love it. All right. So, Give me a moment. Let me get my dachshund out to my wife. She's doing the whining 100%. So give me a moment. We're gonna make a cut here. I'll be right back. Hey Jake, why you gotta be like that?
What Max doesn't know is that his dog is actually a troll in disguise, and as soon as the troll gets off screen, it's gonna transform and eat icy PJs, and then Max is gonna have to step away. Oh, here he comes! Don't tell anyone. Shh.
All right, we're back.
All right, don't check the recording.
Okay. Now I have to. All right. So, right, we're going to talk a little bit about MH3, what it's doing to the arena formats, timeless and historic. And I honestly know nothing about modern, but it interests me, right? Like, modern a couple years ago, I was like, man, this is a fast format. Like, the older formats tend to be way too quick for me. But I want to know a little bit about what's going on in it. So, we're going to delve just a little bit into MH3 and modern as well. All right, I want to start off with your origin story, because I know you've given it in the Discord. I know you've talked about this probably a little bit more than my own. So let's give the folks at home. I don't think the Rebelcast audience has heard it. Why did you start playing Magic, and more importantly, really, where have you come from in terms of esports, competitive gaming, video games, all those things? What led into you playing Magic?
So I started playing Magic because I hate myself. No, I'm kidding. So I technically started playing Magic back when I was in middle school. A couple of my friends were into it. This is back during the Scars of Mirrodin block.
Mm,
Um, and so my first deck was like the starter deck that had like Myr Battlesphere, All the Mirror, and then Sunblast Angel. Um, but that was like very short lived, and I didn't really do much there. I got into Hearthstone for a while.
okay.
While I was playing other games. Biggest game I've ever played was probably League of Legends. I used to back in like 2014, 2015. I was really, really good at the game. And I obviously after that point, I didn't stick around in that. I didn't stick around in that game long term. But I was for a while. I was like 16, 17, coaching people for like $10 an hour.
Ooh.
I got my friend from like some little penny wage, but
Nice
it's fine.
hustle. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. For a 17-year-old, it's fine, right?
Yeah.
So I was doing that. I had a friend of mine that I coached from like low diamond all the way up to master tier, which is like the equivalent of like mythic.
Okay.
Um, and I really cared a lot about the professional scene of that game. I coached some like really low level teams that were doing like small tournaments online. Um, I coached like 3 or 4 different teams doing that, and yeah, I really like kind of got my competitive like side out of me from League of Legends. Um, Fast forward to 2020, I've stopped playing League of Legends because the game just wasn't for me anymore.
Okay.
Um, and I had a couple friends talk me into trying Magic the Gathering, and we tried it on Tabletop Simulator. Um,
Hmm.
and so the set that was out was Theros Beyond Death had just come out at that point. And part of the reason they convinced me to play was because I'm Greek, my family's Greek, and I have this huge thing where I just love mythology.
Yeah.
So I heard Greek mythology set, and I was on board to at least try it. Um, First deck I ever played was Simic Ramp,
Oh
back with
man.
like Uro, Nissa, Cavalier of Thorns, and I always remember having the best feeling in the world to me was like X is 10, Finale of Devastation, hit an end race Forerunners, hit the opponent for 40 damage. I loved that stuff. All those big mid-range ramp decks, I have always loved that stuff. Um, then I stopped for a while. Like I played Arena for a little bit during Theros Beyond Death and a little bit into Ikoria.
Hmm.
And then I stopped for a while and I came back during Innistrad, like the 2
Okay.
Innistrad sets. I think
Mm-hmm.
Crimson Vow I came back.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I really started to get a little bit more competitive with the game. The first time I hit Mythic was right after Neon Dynasty dropped. First time I hit Mythic on Arena. And then I was playing like mono white control / mid range with like wedding announcements, ambitious farmhands. No, it wasn't farmhand. It was professor of symbology back then. But yeah, just
Oh yeah.
way before Lay Down Arms was a card, or Sarah Paragon was a card. I'd loved like white mid range decks.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I got into best of three starting around the time that mono white mid range was a deck. Um, got into playing competitively pretty much right when I joined the Rebellion, like around October of last year, I want to say. Something like that. It was during Wilds of Eldraine, so I don't remember
That
the time
tracks.
frame for
Yeah,
that.
that tracks.
Um, but yeah, since then I've done a couple tournaments. I've participated in Pioneer RCQ season. I've got an RCQ happening this coming Saturday. Wish me luck. Fingers crossed.
But
Um,
yeah.
yeah, that's pretty much everything. Think of anything else that's like super like important to that. Yeah.
Okay, so you've it's safe to say, and kind of like my story, I've played Magic for a wide span of time, not continuously, of course, similar to you, but like taking Magic as a uh, competitive hobby, trying to really be more competitive, win paper tournaments, for example. That's a recent thing for me, as well. I used to just kind of like play uh, tribal decks or kindred decks and really just try to play with my friends. But let me go into my story real quick, and maybe it'll explain a little bit of my point of view when it comes to Magic. I started with the Pokemon trading card game in the late '90s in '99 in middle school, and I immediately just started hustling people out of their cards and Game Boy pockets. Like I learned how to trade, I learned what people valued, and just kind of like exploited that to the maximum effect. And so for me, it started off as a collector's hobby. I didn't really play the game as much, but having to go to like the comic book store, Game Corner in LaGrange, Georgia was a video game like buy sell trade kind of place, but they also had card games. They also had tables in the back. They also played D&D every week. So I started to hang out there especially on Saturdays to try to like get hustle more people out of their cards and stuff, and it just started as a fun little thing. Like I thought I was winning if I could come out the end of the day with more than I came in with, and it was just fun. I hardly had the money to buy packs. I didn't have a lot of spare change as a kid, to go and do that. So that was my way of kind of subverting the system. Um but having to go into the comic book store, having to go where the tables were, I ran into the older kids. A lot of them played Magic. A lot of them played at the time Overpower, which was a huge. It had there were Marvel characters, DC characters, Image, Spawn, uh, a wide variety of like comic book characters. So that attracted me because you could have like five different versions of Storm or the X Men or Professor X, and they had different values based on different stats. And so it was a very simple card game, but that was kind of my introduction into playing card games. Legend of the Five Rings was another one from that time period that actually did really well for a bit. So I started to play Pokemon competitively, and I started to kind of like dabble into that. But in terms of like, I didn't start playing Magic even when I started collecting the cards. Mercadian Masks was the first pack I ever bought in a Top Deck magazine, and those were magazines that used to come with like a pack inside the plastic. So for $5, you got a magazine about trading card games and a pack of cards, and it was different every month. And that was my introduction into Magic cards and starting to trade those. Not knowing the play value of the cards themselves, not really trying the game. I played like several other tabletop and card games before I finally got to Magic. I played WWE, or it was back then it was WWF Raw Deal, which was a wrestling card game, where you had your wrestler and you had different action cards and move cards, and the move cards all had different types, and they had they did damage, and you couldn't play the expensive cards until you had done a certain amount of damage with the lower end cards successfully. So that was my introduction to like, okay, kind of like Magic's mana. Pokemon was my introduction to combat math. So the pieces started to come together. I hadn't realized at that point when I was in middle school, high school, that Magic was really the source of all these ideas that the other trading card games were taking from. So beginning with Onslaught and Scourge, sort of with the set where the slivers came from, I recall, right before Mirrodin, I started to actually play standard Magic and extended Magic. Back then we had extended block. So people could. I started with standard. Then as my collection grew, extended was awesome because you could still play with those older cards. And I also remember 3 block sets. I remember the lore and the stories matching up with the cards really well for 3 sets before they would change over to another plane or another story. And that was fundamental to me. The collector's boxes used to come with a book that talked about the lore from that set, talked about the different characters. We didn't have planeswalkers back then, but we did have main characters that would frequently pop up. And so that's really how I started in Magic, was falling in love with the lore, falling in love with the collectability, which is not how Darth Rictus started. Darth Rictus was very much competitive from the start. So he and I, it's interesting to see those differing viewpoints when we get together and we talk. But nonetheless, I did start to take Magic competitively and seriously around Kamigawa and around Mirrodin, original Mirrodin. And if anybody remembers, original Mirrodin's the worst set to start out in, because you had cranial plating, you had all these cards that were banned within a week of being released. And so the power level was just off the charts when Mirrodin was released. You either played an Artifact Affinity deck or you played the anti-Artifact Affinity deck, and that was it. It was a 2-deck meta. So that was a really hard environment for somebody to start playing standard Magic. And it sort of dissuaded me a little bit. And so I got away from Magic. I came back during college to the Ravnica and the Guild Pact sets. My first competitive deck at a Friday Night Magic was my first 60 card deck too, because back then I was doing noob stuff for a while. I was building just anything that looked good. And so was Izzet, We Dragonauts, and the Slime, where you can tap it to do 1 damage and untap it every time you cast a spell. So a blue-red spell deck was my first competitive deck, and I just remember falling in love with being able to do so many things in 1 turn, so much interaction. So interactive, creature-based Magic was really what I fell in love with, and that's kind of what gets me excited about playing Magic now. I stopped collecting paper for a while. I came back again during the Khans of Tarkir and Dragons of Tarkir set. So Dragons, the Sarkhan, that whole story, the story with Ugin versus Nicol Bolas, and going back in time. I thought that narrative was really intriguing. So I collected the hell out of those. I would pay for the entry for every one of my friends to play Friday Night Magic, and then hand them each a different deck that I had constructed, just to see, like, God, if we had the internet working as well as it does now in conjunction with Arena back then. But I was basically trying to do an old version of that, and just trying to test the waters and see which decks would make it to the top 8, and then build upon the ones that succeeded. But I mean, I didn't have. What I love about Arena now is just you can run so many matches, so many simulations in 1 day. It's so great for information gathering. So I stopped collecting for a couple of years. I came back during Ikoria, Theros and Ikoria, and I loved the Ikoria set. Mutate was my mechanic. I built a Simic Mutate deck. It was Auspicious Starix was my favorite card. It's just an uncommon, but it was one of my favorite cards, and I could just go off with that deck. And then Arena came out, and at first I didn't play it. First I continued to collect paper, and then economic crash kind of happened. The pandemic kind of happened, and so I had no choice. Just kind of, right? It depends on who you ask. But so I picked up Arena, and I picked up the idea that there was this community around Arena starting to build on YouTube. Covert Go Blue, Mono Black Magic, Legend VD. I started to watch those guys. And so just watching those guys do what they did with combos so quickly and every day, daily deck videos in Best of One, I wanted to do the same thing, and I thought I could do it better. So I started streaming Arena. I started streaming Best of One Arena exclusively because it's really high dopamine. You get matches done very quickly. You can do like 30 matches in an hour if you have the right aggro deck. And it's wild. It was wild just how hooked I was to that, and building a collection. Eventually, though, right, the Rebellion got a hold of me. Me and Dark reached out to me after watching some of my streams, and he was like, "Hey, I've got this idea. you seem like somebody who, you know, is also aimed at making the competitive space a thing in Magic, especially around Arena, streaming it. So, you know, we got together, we created the Rebellion with the help of ICPJs, and right off the rip, I wanted to recruit people who had a similar value, had similar ideas in mind about preservation of competitive Magic. I hate to use the word preservation, right? But it really feels like lately we've been in this trend of trying to make the game more casual, more comfortable for new players, and I totally understand that. But my roots, having been a casual collectible, looking at this as a collectible thing, um, when I got into Arena, when I got into Best of One, when I got into the Rebellion, it was like competitive was it for me. I don't see how we can have longevity in the Magic the Gathering community without at least the majority of it, maybe 60% being about competitive and teaching and in a positive way. A lot of people hear that and they think, oh, he's a spike. But in a positive way, teaching each other how to play, teaching each other the basics, the fundamentals, some of the things that Darth Rictus and I talk about week after week on Stay the Meta, things he points out in particular. Um, Basically what you do in the trenches, getting with players in the Discord and asking them the right questions, suggesting the right cards to do what they're really trying to implement. Telling them a lot of times that's telling people that they have a bad idea, you know? And that's not something that people always want to hear. But if you're trying to get better at the game, that's inevitably going to become part of the journey. You've got to purge yourself of the habits that, you know, bad deck building and get into good deck building and good deck building fundamentals. So teaching, spreading that information is what we're all about, and it's really become my passion. But not to spend any more time on it. That's basically our origin stories. That's where we come from and sort of where our trajectory has taken us. And hopefully into the future, we're going to stay in this community, teaching and spreading the gospel of competitive Magic. I mean, in all formats, right? Like I've been strictly playing standard lately, but that's only because I've been practicing some of those fundamentals in one format. I really want to branch out into some of these other formats, specifically the ones that are official, the ones that have RCQs in them, right? So I'm gonna have to play more Pioneer, and I'm gonna have to start playing Modern. So that being said, Athena, you brought up the idea of talking about Modern Horizons 3 today, as intimidating as that is for me personally, because damn, like I don't know anything about the historic meta. It's been a minute since I've looked at the historic meta. I know Timeless is a thing, but really quickly, because I think you've got less to say about Timeless. What's going on with Timeless? What it was an exciting format for all these like old head spikes playing Arena, and it was a boon for Arena at first. What's going on in Timeless? What's the meta look like right now?
So now that grief has been printed into Arena through Modern Horizons 3, um, most of what you're seeing is black-based decks with grief.
Okay.
And it's not even grief scam, it's grief reanimate, because we got reanimate through like the Outlaws of Thunder Junction like bonus sheets.
Uh-huh.
So my experience playing Timeless is that probably around 60% of my opponents are playing some form of grief reanimate Troll of Khazad-dûm deck.
Oh.
Um yeah, it's, and I don't mind it that much because previously it was show and tell or decks that beat show and tell. So grief keeping that deck out of the meta has really kind of let a couple other decks rise. We have like we could not have the Boros mid-range deck if show and tell was still meta.
Okay.
Um you know, we could not have 4 or 5 color mid-range elementals if show and tell was still meta. And I love me some Yorion, Omnath, Beanstalk elementals, because now we have no. It's not like modern, right? We have like Yorion on no Yorion ban, no Fury ban, no
Yeah.
Beanstalk ban. It's good old 5 color fair mid range magic.
Oh God. That terrifies me to hear.
Yeah,
Oh man.
um,
Okay. So is
yeah, but
Timeless, would you say Timeless is a broken format or is it fixable? Obviously, they're not going to do any bans. I mean, that's kind of the soul, the heart and soul of it.
man, would
What
you
could,
consider vintage a broken format? I mean, I think the answer everyone would say is yes, but that's the point.
yeah.
Uh, It's
Yep.
supposed to be broken. The whole point of it is that, they don't ban cards, they restrict them to one. Um, to which I wish they would just get on with it and restrict mana drain already, because that card should definitely not be a 4 of.
Yeah, I agree with
Um,
you there.
but outside of that, it's yeah, I mean the format's nice. I'm just tired of getting grief scammed every game. So unless I feel like playing 4 Leyline of Sanctity decks, I'm just like kind of done with Timeless for now. Um,
Feel that.
Putting it
I
on the
feel that.
shelf for one of my new favorite formats.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's one of those like Alchemy. I'll come back to every now and again to check in on it and see what's going on. Alchemy, by the way, not that we're talking about it today, but I have to say is actually a little healthier than I thought. I played a little bit of it since our showdown video, and it's interesting. It's a lot better than it was when it started. When it started, there was way too much broken stuff going on. Kind of like it was kind of like what Timeless is now in the very beginning, and it was too
Yeah.
much, but since it rotated a lot of the problematic cards in standard, I think it's a viable thing. But not spend any time on that one. We'll talk about alchemy another day. I want to get to historic. Um, we talked about briefly, sort of what Modern Horizons 3 has done to Timeless. What is it doing to historic? What does the historic meta look like right now?
All right. So let me tell you, Max. You said you didn't know much about historic or the meta, right? You have the
Right.
right person here, because I don't know if you realized I've changed my name in the Discord to Historic Merchant, because I'm here to sell people on historic.
Fair
All
enough.
right. I have mostly played standard for most of my time playing. I've played a bit of Explorer here and there.
Mhm.
I tried historic because I wanted to play with one of the new Modern Horizons 3 cards, but didn't want to play against Bowmasters.
Okay.
So I played historic. I gotta say, like, the historic metagame is extremely healthy. It is a brewer's paradise right now.
Ooh.
Um, like, I could think of like I think I posted in the Discord. I've played about 100 games of historic at this point. 100 best of threes in historic. I've seen consistently about 16 or 17 different decks, and that's
Okay.
not counting the random brews I'm seeing one-offs.
Okay.
Um, like, and so I looked into like the historic metagame from before, back when we had like a historic metagame challenge, and it was like Green Devotion and Is It Wizards at the top. There was like Selesnya Enchantress, and then Yawgmoth after that. Um, Now it's up in the water. I'd say you still see a lot of Devotion. You still see a lot of Is It Wizards. But the new kid on the block is you take Guide of Souls and you take Ocelot Pride and you throw them in a deck together and put whatever cards you want around those two cards.
Okay, I'm looking at that right now. Ocelot Pride in particular is new for Modern Horizons. A one drop cat, first strike lifelink has Ascend. Beginning event step, if you gain life this turn, create a 1/1 white cat. Then, if you have the city's blessing for each token you control to enter the battlefield this turn, create a token that's a copy. Oh, wow. Okay. So I can see how that can get out of hand.
So
Wow.
I for me, my personal deck that I've been playing was Soul Sisters, um, because I saw, I thought to myself, how can we just gain life every turn and fill the board with these Ocelot Pride tokens? Like, well, if we go Guide of Souls, that's already good with it, right? And we
Hmm.
add Soul Ward into it, and then we start adding like your creatures that gain power off of it. So we have Voice of the Blessed, and we have I was using like a Johnny's Pride Mate at first, then I switched to Orzov. Now we have Amalia. Um, and then you add it with like cards like Abiding Grace. I mean the new Sorin is insane. It seems like such an insane card to me. I
Yeah.
have nuked people for over 20 damage playing this deck with Sorin. I will say historic is like the 35 life format. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
you can play traditional aggro decks in historic right now, because every deck just gains like 10 life throughout the game.
Wow. Okay.
Um, the only aggro deck that I've really seen is it Wizards, which hasn't gotten any new cards, but still just kills people on turn 3, so doesn't really matter all that much. Um, yeah.
Well, that's a good segue into my next question, which, when I'm grading any format, what turn does it feel like, if you had to average every best of three you've played, every single match, what turn does it feel like the game hinges or ends on the most? If somebody has the perfect combo, is it like a turn 3 format, a turn 4 format? What would you say?
Man, that's really hard to tell. It really depends. So okay, I think if you are not actively interacting with your opponent, you have to end the game by turn 4. Because there are quite a few combo decks that will end the game on turn 4 guaranteed that can sometimes end it on turn 3. So you really should have interaction regardless, unless you can kill on turn 3 like wizards.
Okay. Okay.
Um, that said, there's a ton of interaction in every color in this format. It's not Explorer, right? In Explorer, you can't play good instant speed white interaction in mid-range
Yeah.
decks.
Yeah.
We have oh, is it Fractured? No, it's not Fractured Identity. Fragment something? I don't remember the name of it.
Fragmented reality or something like
Yeah,
that.
Fragment Reality
Yeah.
is a good one. And then we also have Path to Exile, which is another good one for white.
Ooh. Yeah, that is a
So
good one.
yeah, so you get some pretty powerful interaction in pretty much every color. Red now has Galvanic
Yep.
Discharge. Galvanic Discharge, is that the
Let
name
me
of it? I
see.
don't
Let me
remember.
see.
The new energy one that like it's basically the first
Yeah.
time it deals 3, the next time it deals 10.
Yeah. Galvanic
um
discharge.
yeah, that card's nuts. So I would say in total the two most important turns in the game are turn 1 and turn 4. Um because the turn 1 plays of the format between Elf, Symmetry Sage, um Guide of Souls, or mostly those 3. Those are like probably the 3 best one drops in the format.
And I'm looking over the deck
Um,
list right now, and wow, Static Prison is also kind of a good card here with Guide of Souls.
mhm.
Uh, yeah, that's a turn. Wow. Okay. Fair
The
enough.
Boros energy deck is probably the most popular deck. It's got
Okay.
2 different iterations that I see. Some people like Luris. Some people prefer Flage, Fable, and Bone Crusher Giant.
Okay.
Um, I think Flage and Fable are way too good to pass up on. I don't like Luris because the amount of games that you have Ocelot Pride out and you get a Fable to flip, so you can copy anything and then get an extra token of whatever that thing is you copied that stays around.
Oh, that's sick.
Um,
Oh,
or with Flage, just you're cycling through all these one drops really fast in a high removal format. So you just end up filling your graveyard super quick for a Flage. Yeah, I think that this is probably the best deck in the format, if I had to guess. Um, if you
yeah.
want to beat it, you can play Devotion. Probably is fine against it. Well, Static Prison's really good against Devotion. So it really depends. It is kind of a toss up. Like there's a lot of good decks right now. People play Eldrazi, the colorless Eldrazi ramp deck. People play Yawgmoth. People play there's like a 4-color energy combo deck that can go infinite. People play like green white life gain combo with like Heliod and Scurry Oak.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've seen a ton of
Okay.
different decks. This format's amazing. Play historic. Play historic. I'm not sponsored by Wizards of the Coast, but play historic. Like
No, yeah. Yeah, check it
it's
out. And if
yeah.
you're a lover of Karn went here. So
Yeah.
there's there's multiple
Yeah.
reasons to go into historic right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Karn died for Nykthos' sins.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
100% there. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Poor Mono
Uh
Green. Poor Mono
Poor
Green and
Mono Green.
Pioneer. All
Yeah.
right. Before we go, I did want to spend some time talking about modern, and I'll have for the viewers the Frank Karsten modern metagame as of 4 days ago, in which we have Ruby Storm, Bant Nadu, Living End, Mono Red Prowess, Eldrazi Tron, Boros Burn, Is It Murktide. There's a lot of decks to look at and talk about there. What are some highlights that you think you might be interested in when it comes to modern?
So I have never played Modern before. I have never really looked into Modern ever since the Fury Beanstalk ban. I kind of lost interest because,
Yeah,
if I was going to play before, I was going to play 5-color Omnath. Um, Now with Modern Horizons 3, there's 3 decks I'm looking at to play if I play Modern Season, which of course requires a pretty large monetary investment at this point as someone who's never played the format.
yeah.
Um, And the 3 decks are Boros Energy / Midrange, which is fairly similar to the one you see in Historic.
Fair enough.
Um, you have the Jeskai Control deck that uses the new energy cards between Tune the Narrative, Galvanic Disruption, and Wrath of the Skies.
Okay, I see that.
Which I've played that deck on Timeless, and Wrath of the Skies is probably one of the most insane cards I've ever played with in my entire life. 2 mana Wrath the board is just so insane.
Also got to love a
Um,
full set of the One Ring.
yeah, yeah. You're basically just playing around your energy until you can go like 2 mana Wrath the board, land a Flage, win the game. Really cool deck. That I love how the deck looks. And then the third deck that I'm really interested in is Ruby Storm. Um,
Ooh.
I love Lotus Field in Pioneer.
Mhm.
I love how the deck works and like how all of its interactions work. Ruby Storm kind of like scratches that itch for me too. So
Okay.
um, deck looks super fun. I love those kind of like 100 spell combo decks. So um, yeah, that's like where that's also the cheapest out of the 3 options. So like I think like there's versions of it that are like $500,
Oh
which for
wow.
modern is very cheap. So
Yeah, I was gonna
yeah,
say. You
yeah.
got four.
For
You got
reference, that
the.
Jeskai control deck's like $1,100. So
You got 4
yeah.
copies of Ruby Medallion in here. 4 copies
Mm-hmm.
of Wish. Oh God, Wish. Yeah, man, been a
Mm-hmm.
while since I've seen or gotten to play with some of these cards.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, all
Yeah,
right.
it looks like a fun format. I mean, people are screaming for Nadu bans. I don't think you should ban anything in a new format until at least 3 months out. Like let the meta settle and do its thing.
Yeah, to be fair, also I think half the crowd calling for Nadu bans are calling for it in Commander. But anyway.
They're also the same crowd calling for Fable, Treasure Cruise, and Amalia bans in Pioneer. So you should probably just not
Yeah.
listen to them, right? So
Yeah, I'm actually one of the people that agreed with the announcement today, where Wizards was just like,
mm.
"Yes, these things are broken, but there's like 20 decks in each format. We're fine."
Yeah, like I have had this discussion a couple times on the Discord now, where people are calling for an Amalia ban because
Yeah.
it's top of the meta in Pioneer and really hard to deal with.
Mm.
But it's also only been top of the meta for like less than a month, and like Phoenix was top of the meta for 2 months before that. Vampires was top of the meta 2 months before that. Like we're gonna find the next meta that beats Amalia. Like it's not an unbeatable deck.
No, it's not. We and
Yeah.
I we just did a Pioneer State of the Meta today, me and Dark, and Wednesday at noon. Come by for that premiere. Um, we're going to talk about just how many decks outside of Amalia in Tier 1 and in Tier 2 have main board cards against Izzet and Amalia, and like you're starting to see that trend across the board. So it's still very tight margins in Pioneer. The win rates between Tier 1 and Tier 2. So yeah, to agree with what you said.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh man. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us for this special episode of the Rebelcast. We are just shifting the format a little bit, and I'm in total agreement because this was awesome. This was fun, just to candidly be able to talk about this with you, and relax and get outside the script a little bit. So hopefully we do more of these. Thank you for coming on, Athena the Bun. Thank you for doing these with me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for giving this like more casual thing a shot. Cause
Oh yeah,
yeah, I don't know. It's more fun this way to just like chill and talk about magic with a friend, right?
yeah.
So
I totally agree. I
yeah.
totally agree. But in any event, we're gonna have another Rebelcast episode out before rotation. I plan on having at least one more, 2 more probably before we get to the big date in July. I think July 26th is when it goes live on Arena. It's coming up fast. I am I'm kind of getting sweaty thinking about just rotation happening and
I
all
can't wait for
all
rotation.
those
Oh my
problematic
god.
cards just getting swept off the table. Although we are still going to have like Sunfall and a couple of other things I won't talk about here as well.
Death to Atrax's domain, like Trilands. Death to the
Yes,
Cycle Lands. That's all I'm happy
yes.
about. Get domain out of here. I hate that deck.
We're going to
I
go
don't
back.
care that it's not good.
My prediction is we're going to go back to seeing a lot of dual color decks. That will be the norm for a while. But in
Mm,
any event,
yeah.
in any event, Thank you for joining us, and until next time, untap, upkeep,
Upkeep, resist.
resist.